and cut his law. Because he was an inventor, he came up with a scheme to interest people in the water from his spring on his Gettysburg farm. He had the water analyzed by a professor at Gettysburg College who found that it had rare minerals like lithia, which is not so rare. But they were the PR campaign behind this was so good that they were able to have this story picked up by national newspapers and even international newspapers. And this was one of the first really successful tourist enterprises following the Civil War here in Gettysburg. So in 1865, in October, that's the first time that editorials are published about the spring, which is directly behind you. That is the spring. And I have a bottle here. Starting in 1867, a New York company was contracted to bottle the water and ship it all over the country. It was shipped to California, Florida, Atlanta. It was shipped to Ireland. It was shipped just about anywhere you could think of within the first 3 or 4 years, and thousands and thousands and thousands of these bottles were made. They're very expensive today, and there aren't many left. But here is one. I like bringing it back to the site where it was bottled.
We're all going to close our eyes and play catch with.
Yeah. Gettysburg Talcine water. Now you're probably wondering, what the hell does that mean? Talcine. It is a made-up word that was invented at the time. Some people think it's Greek for laxative. The water was known to have that type of power. In fact, there was a myth circulating. There was a myth circulated following the battle that Confederates drank from the spring and were seized with awful diarrhea, and that the Union Army had poisoned the waters of the spring. But then later it was learned that the spring had been naturally laxative in nature. Anyway, so this story picks up, and Harmon makes a lot of money. He actually sells a little island of his land on that hill where a hotel is built in 1869, the Gettysburg Springs Hotel. Gary has some pictures of it too, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, we probably don't have time to walk over, but it was just past that clump of trees, and it faced towards Route 30, that way. The hotel was the site of a ball at the time of the dedication of the Soldiers' National Monument in 1869. And there was a building constructed over the spring to protect it. Hold on. And we have a really neat photo of that. We got that. Oh, you got this. We got lots of photos here.
How many rooms in the hotel?
I don't know. That's a good question.
108 then.
108. It was 4 stories with a cupola. There was a kitchen house on the side, and the veranda porch was probably the best known feature of the hotel because for various veterans reunions following the battle, generals like Dan Sickles, Joshua Chamberlain,
George Sickles, not Chamberlain.
George Meade, James Longstreet, Wade Hampton would sit in rocking chairs on the veranda porch of the hotel, and visitors would come up and talk to them and gather around for stories. Can you imagine?
How about?
Yes, and we have this really amazing illustration from Frank Leslie's illustrated newspaper from 1869, showing George Meade standing inside and next to the spring that you see right there, sampling the water. So if you stand just to the right of it, my right, your left, if you're turning around, that is exactly where George Meade is standing as he's sampling the water.
The pellucid
Yeah.
and what am I looking for? Clear, crisp, and diarrhea-causing.
And one last thing I wanted to point out, as the hotel is being built, there's actually a conflict of authority that's happening over the possession of the spring. The New York company that Harmon had been working with actually is forced to leave. Harmon builds blockades so that the New Yorkers can't get to the spring. He's obviously not happy with the business practices that are going on. But in 1869, there's actually a New York Times editorial called "The Second Battle at Gettysburg," and it is fascinating. If I can find it in time. Latest news from the front proclaims a lull in the hostilities at Gettysburg. The other day, there were dread war rumors from the historic battlefield. The proprietor of the springs had forcibly expelled the lessees, a party of men was in charge of the bottling establishment, and an armed force was on duty to guard the springs during the night. It was reported that the enemy was also mustering forces to regain possession, threatening serious consequences. Thus, history was about to repeat itself, and so the Great Battle of Gettysburg was likely to duplicate in miniature. That happens, and then the following day, a stranger knocks at the door of the spring, and the account says, as this is a common occurrence, no suspicion was excited. He was admitted to the bottling establishment through which he had to pass to reach the spring. Seizing the opportunity, he thrust his attendant from the building, and following him, turned the key of the door and coolly informed him that he was an agent of the New York Gettysburg Springs Company, and that he had taken possession for his principals. He occupied the premises during the night. He is believed to be a New York detective. So this is big national news happening right here at this little obscure site on the Emanuel Harmon farm west of Willoughby's Run. No one was killed as far as I know. But the hotel stood until 1917 when it burned down, and then the water was again sold one last time from that stone building, which was built in part from stones from the foundation of the Springs Hotel.
And probably from the rock that's missing in Willoughby's Run.
And the Springs water was piped to that building, and it was sold once again in the 1930s, and then it was sold no more after that. And all you'll see now of it is bottles every once in a while cycling through eBay. But that is the story in short of the Springs Hotel and the Gettysburg Catalyzine Spring. So
Excellent, Anthony. Thanks so much. It occurs to me we always like to get a group picture. I don't know. I know when we get to Lee's headquarters, you guys are going to scatter. You know, as Martin Sheen would say,